Alright guys, we are back with another video. This video is all about why DC fans are so divided. But before I get into that, I do want to say that if there's one thing that translates across both aisles is that all DC fans want the same type of success that the Marvel fans got in their cinematic universe. But I think the fan base is so divided on how to achieve that type of cultural impact and that type of success. But let's get into why DC fans are so divided. So first off, the obvious reason is that we have two completely different visions for the DC universe. On one hand, you have the Zack Snyder vision, which is way more serious, more mythic in nature, really taking these heroes and seeing what it would be like if you put them in our real world. And on the other hand, you have James Gunn, which is more, at least in terms of his theatrical movie Superman, it seems more like he's taking us from the real world and putting us into the comic book. For instance, in that big kaiju fight, you see people standing around recording on their phones, they're not really running away. And you think in real life people would be running away. There's a giant kaiju who's spitting out fire and whatnot, screaming, but people are just standing there. You know, one guy's like eating some like yogurt or something. I don't know. It's like they're aware they're in this comic book movie and no one's gonna die under James Gunn's watch. And you guys remember when Superman punched that one raptor in his mouth and his tooth like hit the screen and it bounced off, clearly breaking the fourth wall. James Gunn is really letting you know that this is a different world. Like, it is not our real world. It is like a comic booky world. And like I said, Zack Snyder is more serious. It is darker because our real world can be a little dark, but that's also just his style. I mean, we all saw like 300, you know, it's just a little darker, but that's a big reason why the fan base is divided. Some fans are here for that more realistic, darker tone, and other fans are just not. They want something brighter, more hopeful, even though I would argue there is plenty of hope in Zack Snyder's universe. And I've said this before, if you thought Man of Steel was divisive, then I think by definition, you have to think the Superman 2025 movie is also divisive. It's almost a polar opposite movie. It's just the other side of the coin. But I do want to say this, I do think that both directors know the comics. And like some people say, like James Gunn fans say, Zack Snyder doesn't know the comics. He doesn't understand the characters. You know, for instance, he has Batman using guns and clearly, you know, people in that warehouse scene definitely died. But we do know that Jim Lee was working with Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder read plenty of comic books. You know, we all know that he cares about DC and that he reads comics. You know, Superman had good parents, Krypton exploded, he was raised in Smallville. I mean, there's a lot of things that are straight from the comics. Sure, he's taking liberties with like the mother boxes and how they look and how they operate, but you know, that's just his vision. And he's taking some liberties as a director. And I think James Gunn understands the comics, and I think he knows the comics, and I think he's just like picking and choosing the certain eras that he wants to adapt. I think he likes a much older Superman, you know, in terms of like how his Superman operates, and I think he likes a very current Supergirl in terms of like that Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. And next, this is the big one. I think majority of fans, they aren't picking between characters, they're really picking philosophies. Like, you don't really see a lot of people saying, I love Ben Affleck's Batman, but I also love like David Cornsweat's Superman. People are really just picking different philosophies. And I'm gonna just come right out and say it. I think Zack Snyder is more masculine, maybe more conservative, and I think James Gunn is more emotional and more woke. One is not necessarily better than the other, but my personal preference in an action franchise or a sci-fi franchise, I think you just need to go more masculine because it's a guy thing. I think majority of people who see these movies are adult males, but one isn't inherently better than the other. But let me explain what I mean by all this. When you watch the Zack Snyder Man of Steel or Batman v Superman or the Snyder Cut, it is clearly masculine, you guys. He's gonna give you the explosions. He's gonna give you like the big epic shots. People may die in his movies, right? You are not gonna get jokes. You are not gonna get pop songs. The movies are more serious and they take themselves seriously.
I will reclaim what you have taken from us.
I will find him. I will find him, Lara.
I will find him!
And when I say he's more conservative, I mean like he's not afraid to have his Superman say, I'm about as American as it gets.
How do we know you won't one day act against America's interests?
I grew up in Kansas, General. About as American as it gets.
He's not afraid to have the military be a strong presence in his movies. The military was a big presence in Man of Steel, and in Batman v Superman, the freaking president signed off on nuking Superman and Doomsday, both of which are extremely realistic. If superheroes were here today and like if Superman came down, the military will be all over that. If Zod's trying to invade, best believe the military is going to try their best to stop it, even if it's futile. And Superman 1000% would get tried with a nuke in real life. And what I mean by James Gunn is more emotional and woke woke. I mean, like, James Gunn is always gonna have some type of cute CGI creature in all the superhero movies. Go and watch his stuff. I mean, he always has some type of cute CGI creature, and he's always going to try to pull on the heartstrings. He's gonna give you those pop songs. He's gonna give you jokes. He's gonna give you some of this levity. He's just a little bit more emotional. He wants to pull on your heartstrings. And what I mean by him being woke, it's like in Superman 2025, that whole jar and pour incident, it's almost like he's pointing the whole audience's attention to like the whole Palestine stuff going on. It seems like that was almost like a direct comparison. In Peacemaker, he made Peacemaker bisexual, which clearly not everyone's gonna be into, but he also made the hardcore character toxically masculine, you guys.
I've come to the conclusion you suffer from a particularly severe form of toxic masculinity.
What?
He took basically all the masculinity that should have been going to Peacemaker and gave it all to hardcore. I think you are more likely to see girl boss with James Gunn. I think you are more likely to get sexuality politics with James Gunn and political messaging with James Gunn. Not to say having a strong military presence in Zack Snyder stuff isn't also political messaging, who knows? But you have James Gunn saying, like in his Superman press tour, like Superman is an immigrant and this is really an immigrant story, which is really not the case. Superman is a refugee. He doesn't have a place to go back to. Immigrants can go back to their home. Superman's home blew up. He is a refugee. But yeah, I think James Gunn plays on the heartstrings more. He's more emotional, and I think he's a little bit more woke. And I think Zack Snyder is more masculine, more serious, and a little bit more conservative. And like I said, one is not necessarily better than the other. It just depends on your preference, and it depends on how you view success. Is it just like box office dollars, or is it like audience score and critic ratings? If you go by dollars, you can say that Zack Snyder's winning. If you go by critic score and ratings, you can say that James Gunn's winning. But the fan base is picking philosophies. Not too many people are right in the middle. A lot of people are just picking one side or the other. And while we're on the topic about the military, I'm trying to think, does Marvel really have like a military presence in their movies? I mean, I know like SHIELD is like a government thing, but like you really don't see a strong military presence in the Marvel movies. I mean, in Avengers, they did try to nuke New York, right? I mean, someone had to sign off on that. And there was some type of military presence in Captain America, Brave New World. We know that Secretary Ross became president, and we know he's like a military guy, and there was like a little bit of a military presence then. But there's a strong argument that that movie was really an Incredible Hulk sequel movie, which definitely had a military presence.
Where are the 50 cals? Move your asses!
And there's a strong argument that Marvel was actually pretty conservative when they were first starting out. I mean, the whole Avengers roster are white people. No one was screaming about DEI and all that stuff, and everyone loved the Avengers movie. And the biggest characters for Marvel right now are their like OG characters, really. So much so that Chris Evans can't retire, or Robert Downey Jr. But let's get back on topic. I think the biggest thing that is dividing the fan base is just the social media, you guys. All the memes and all the like toxicity and all the name calling and cyberbullying. I mean, one whole side of the fan base is calling the other side like Snyder cultists and Snyder bros as an insult, and then the other side are calling the James Gunn fans like guntards and stuff like that. And that name calling just entrenches you in your own views, and it makes you just take a stand, right? You get called a Snyder cultist, now you don't want to like watch any James Gunn stuff. You don't want to support his movies, you don't want to support his shows, and you don't like his fans, right? And then when you get called a guntard, it's the same thing. You're like, I will never respect Zack Snyder's movies. I will never watch Man of Steel again. I think the Snyder cut sucks. All those type of things, right? You know, the Superman meme of his tongue out and all that stuff, the Martha memes. Yeah, all that stuff is incredibly toxic, and it is what is dividing the fan base. It's a real big reason why the fan base is divided. And you really don't see that going on with Marvel too much. I think in like broad strokes, the Marvel fan base kind of like goes like together, right? Like majority of the fan base didn't like She-Hulk. Majority of the fan base didn't like Ironheart. Majority of the fan base are not happy with the whole like multiverse saga movies. Majority of their fan base can care less about the girl boss stuff. They didn't show up for the Marvels. They didn't care about Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, or Miss Marvel. Yes, you have some Marvel fans that were upset when Chris Evans was announced to come back in Doomsday, but for the most part, Marvel fans were pretty excited about hearing that, and I think they all have high hopes for Spider-Man and Doomsday, so they all kind of like moved together in a unit. They were all excited and all like disappointed at the same time. But DC is like the polar opposite. Every time Zack Snyder posts a picture, you can scroll and you will always find some James Gunn fans in there, like with a meme or something, or talking crap, and vice versa. James Gunn will post something and you keep scrolling, eventually you'll find some Snyder bro posting something of like Henry Cavill Superman or something like that. DC fans aren't moving in unison like Marvel fans are. DC fans are split. I mean, that's what happens when you have two completely different universes. And it really kind of boils down to your personal preference and honestly what you deem success. If like the goal is to have DC kind of rival Marvel, it's like, are you going for box office dollars or are you going for ratings? Because so far DC has to put both those together in one movie. I mean, outside of like Wonder Woman, of course, but I'm talking like consistently. And of course, Aquaman was $1 billion movie too, but I mean, that was kind of like mediocre, you know, in terms of ratings. I mean, Aquaman just cleaned up overseas. I don't know what to tell you. I don't even know how that happened, but it happened. But yeah, that's why I think DC fans are so divided. You just have two completely different visions for the DC universe, and you have two completely different philosophies for the DC universe. And it's because the guys who are running it are just two completely different people, even though they're friends. I think Zack Snyder clearly appears to be more masculine. James Gunn wears like kittens on his t-shirt and stuff like that. I mean, James Gunn is clearly a little bit more liberal, a little bit more woke. Zack Snyder's going on Joe Rogan's podcast, and James Gunn saying things like truth, justice, and whatever. They couldn't be further apart, although they are friends, right? But yeah, you guys, what do you think about all this? Let me know in the comments below. Do you think I'm right? Do you think people are like mostly picking different philosophies? One side's more emotional, more liberal, more woke, while the other side is more like masculine, more serious, more conservative? Because that's how I see it. And I'm really curious about what you guys have to say about all this. I mean, it would be nice if we were all one big cohesive unit, but that is just not gonna happen anytime soon. Maybe a third reboot would be right in the middle, you guys. And yeah, I said this before, I think the best Superman and maybe like the best universe was like that little snippet we got out of that DC Universe Online trailer back in the day, you guys. I mean, clearly it was bright and colorful, but yet you see that that version of Superman has been pushed over the edge. He seems very intense, and I think that's the perfect balance. He's in his classic costume, but we all know the absolute best version of these characters, the best version of the universe exists in the comics themselves, the actual lore. For me personally, I do like a little 2008 Jeff Johns Superman, and I do like the 2016 Rebirth Superman. I like all that stuff, but I'm absolutely loving Absolute Superman that's going on right now. That is perfect. But yeah, let me know your thoughts about all of this. Do you guys think people are just picking philosophies? And if you've stayed this far in the video, smash that subscribe button. I gotta be better than that last jerk you just watched. This is the best account under 1,000 subs. We are growing every single day, you guys, and we are so close to 1,000 subs, so smash that subscribe button. Get in early with the new guy. How many chances do you have to subscribe to someone before they get monetized? Click here to binge more of my content. And as always, thank you for inviting me into your home, and thank you for joining me in mine. I'll see you guys in the next video.